I'm just doing my thing, doing my thing. Oh, you keep hanging. I'm just doing my thing. Oh, you keep hanging.
So I give you solutions, not just here's the problem, but I give you solutions.
I'm just doing my 6 in the morning. Yeah, I'm on my dough.
And that's why I wrote the book. It took me, it's about 37 to 40 years of research.
Now I'm flourishing, life's an excursion. If you get it,
When you isolate a vitamin from its whole food form, it becomes nothing more than an isolated chemical, and your body actually has to work harder to break it down to its molecular structure.
feeling so good, so good. And I'm feeling so good.
Welcome everybody to Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I am Sharyn Wynters, and this show is called The Pure Cure, a complete guide to freeing your life from dangerous toxins, and it's based on my book, The Pure Cure, which is 20 different chapters of areas of concern and solutions to what you can do about it. I am so excited for today's show because I have a living legend in the studio with me, a dear friend of mine, Stephen Halpern. But before I introduce you, in case you don't already know who he is, and I can't imagine anybody living on this planet that's into music not knowing who Stephen Halpern is, I want to share a little bit about who he is. He's a Grammy-nominated, award-winning composer, recording artist, and producer whose healing music has helped millions worldwide to experience the blessings and benefits of deep relaxation and inner peace. CHAKRA SUITE, his debut release in 1975, helped establish a quiet revolution and a new genre in contemporary instrumental music. To date, it has sold over 700,000 copies, and Halpern's cumulative sales exceed 7 million units, and his current releases continue to set the standard of excellence in the field. Based on his own spiritual and health-related experiences, Stephen discovered secrets of combining ancient sound healing traditions with quantum biology and energy medicine to produce recordings that support relaxation, stress management, yoga, meditation, massage, sleep, accelerated learning, and pure listening pleasure. Halpern's most representative and best-selling recordings include Peace of Mind, Music for Sound Healing, Inner Peace, and the Billboard's charting Deep Alpha and Deep Theta. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Stephen Halpern.
Thank you, Sharon. Delight to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here, that we can talk about my favorite subject, music. And we were listening to some of your music driving down here, right, which was it put me in such a blissful state that I got lost. The first time I go, where am I? And we were just chatting.
We were talking and just in the zone.
We were definitely in the zone.
And that's the problem sometimes with when you don't choose your music. If you just play the radio, just play Slack or Pandora, you don't know what you're getting. As we'll go through today.
I was having a good time. We were having a great conversation, right?
Exactly.
You were giving me some old history, which was always a delight for me to hear. I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in all this? Because you're the first person, really. You're the wisdom, the what would I call you? The I don't want to call you grandfather because you're too young.
The elder statesman or the pioneer.
The pioneer, that's it. The pioneer in this type of music. Right. And there have been many people that have tried to copy it and that call it metaphysical music, but I call it metaphysical meandering, actually. We talked about that. So how did you get started, Stephen?
Well, a couple of different ways. Number one, I paid attention to what my body was telling me. And my journey has always been as someone who's been very much sensitive to sound. Yeah. So it was not just the healing powers of sound, but the stressful and the negative, dysfunctional aspects of sound that noise would always annoy me more. Even before I was a musician, our family had one of the noisiest refrigerators that I've ever heard in my life. And I used to complain because our kitchen was about the size of this table here.
Right.
And the family table, the dinner table was right next to the refrigerator. And I could feel it rumbling in my stomach. And I complained to my father, complained to my mother. My father said, "Shut up. How could sound affect you? It's invisible. It doesn't affect me. Therefore, it doesn't affect you."
Right, it doesn't exist.
So it's your problem. And part of the reason I got into research later on in my life was to find out if my father was wrong or whether there was something really unusual about me. Well, there are unusual things about me, and my hearing is beyond what regular people hear. But everybody is affected by the sounds around them. And it was also about that time that I started getting involved in music. And very quickly, I discovered that music was my entrance into what we now call the zone, or connecting to the quantum field. Before I knew what meditation was, I could get into that still point with music. Now, early on, it was more of a jazz inflected and a high energy jazz, playing trumpet and then guitar. But it was the experience of getting into that very quiet place that I could do everything else.
Interesting that you picked the trumpet.
Well, it kind of picked me. In third grade, back in Valley Stream, you had a choice of trumpet, clarinet in the school band, was what it was, or flute, or violin. And none of those were of much interest. The trumpet had 3 valves, looked like it was easy. And since we're near Burbank, I can say this and people will appreciate it. My best friend at the time was fighting me for the trombone and the trumpet. And I said, "Alan Moonves, I'll continue to be your best friend if you give, I need the trumpet." And he got the baritone and the trombone. His brother went on, as you know, to be Les Moonves, and
wow, the rest is history, right?
the rest is history.
Right.
But that moment, for me, the rest was history, because trumpet was something that I got good on very quickly. So suddenly I was able to play with people several years older than me and was on stage with that. And then
How old were you?
Well, this is now starting age 11. With the first day of junior high school, I met in 7th grade, I met the 9th graders who were improvising jazz, playing music without reading the notes. Light went on my head, and I said, "I need to know how to do that." And I asked them, "How do you do that?" They said, "Well, you play what you feel." No, there's got to be more than that, because I don't feel that. And so I started studying. They told me who their teachers were. I studied with their teachers and got good at improvising very, very quickly. And then as the next number of years went on, the music took on a life of its own. But it really wasn't until my first year in college that music started coming through without me thinking about it. Because even with improvisation, you learn all the scales, you learn the chords, and you learn what to play against this harmonic change. And at a certain point, you need to forget those rules. But playing with a high energy in a jam session with someone who's like John Coltrane, Charles Gale up in Buffalo, and the Jack Clark, the leading piano player and master teacher in Buffalo at the time, energy started coming through that took me into a place that I'd never been before. And it felt great.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is that like?
Well, it was like surfing on a beautiful wave where I was now surfing on the music wave, and it was automatic. And ultimately, that is what led me when I sat down at a piano some years later to having the quieter music able to come through, because I had understood that state that I needed to be in to get my ego out of the way, to get all my learning, my left brain out of the way, and just be in a balanced brainwave state. So when I started doing biofeedback research, I found out that I was already in some of the deepest states when I was playing music or composing.
So what led you to the biofeedback?
Well, as I say, I was doing the high energy jazz through college.
What college did you go to?
University of Buffalo, State University up in Buffalo. We had
Cold.
It was, but for a while, it was the Berkeley of the East, and we had some of the best musicians. We had the first black studies program and the music program. I was one of the 2 white musicians allowed in because I was the best trumpet player in Buffalo. and in classes with Mr. Ron Carter, jazz bassist, and other wonderful musicians. And I came out west for a 2-week visit before going back to grad school in Buffalo. And I had an experience meditating in a redwood grove outside of Santa Cruz, where I literally started hearing a different kind of music that wasn't the fast kind of music that was cathartic and energetically freeing. It wasn't very gentle. As you know, that kind of jazz never got to be very popular. But I had been turned on to, in my studies of yoga and meditation in my junior and senior year, to the ancient history of healing with music, going back to ancient Greece and India and China and Egypt. And I said, I want to know about that. So I started doing a literature search, but that was only reading other people's stories or their opinions. I wanted to hear that music. And in that meditation in the woods, shortly after I came out to California for the visit, I heard the music, and I heard in my head the voice basically saying, this is the music that you've been searching for. Now your job is to bring this out into the world. And I had no idea what that meant. I said, I'm a college graduate, I'm going back to graduate school. I have no money. But the sound was just captivating. And literally within 2 hours, I found myself at a piano and started playing. And this music started coming through.
Had you played piano before?
A little bit. I mean, I play guitar, I play trumpet, so I knew my way around the piano, but I never studied.
Right.
I couldn't read music on piano. I could read it on trumpet, read it on guitar.
Right.
But my hands were guided. When I was on and at the keyboard, my hands would be guided, and it was music that had a lot of space and a lot of silence in it. Now, that harkened back to shakuhachi music or the alap portions of Indian raga music, but it didn't necessarily have to go into the fast parts. It stayed in that very gentle space, in the same way that a Buddhist would play the meditation bowls, the Tibetan singing bowls, that, as Alan Watts taught us, the music doesn't have to go anywhere. It is right there, and then you just listen to the space between the sounds.
Yes.
And that became part of my mantra.
And that's part of meditation.
Well, absolutely.
That is meditation.
Absolutely.
It's like getting in between the silence, in between the thoughts.
Right.
And
that's
the more you can meditate on the silence in between the thoughts, the clearer your mind can be.
Exactly.
So, rest.
Right. So we have Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer writing about the gap between thoughts, or that silence. I talked for years before that, the silence between the notes. But we're all talking about the same thing.
Right.
And it's where you shut down the chattering mind, the thinking mind. And for me, getting into that space allowed me to play the music, that I couldn't fake it. I had to be in that space. So it was an ideal discipline, because in order to do the music I wanted to do, I had to walk the talk.
Right.
So some of my highest moments have always been in the studio.
Of course. Yeah.
And then recording that was the first step. But then the question was, how do you get this out into the world? There wasn't, so I took it to some of the record labels, and they said, where's the beat? Where are the words?
Right.
Where's it going? I said, well, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It's already there. It's in the now. It's in the present moment.
Oh, and they certainly related to that, right?
Well, back then they didn't, because Eckhart Tolle hadn't written his book yet.
Right.
But
I'm being facetious, right?
It was.
Doesn't have to go. What do you mean music? You need a hook. Where's the hook?
Exactly. So my graduate mentors would say, we don't know if we could give you a grade on this. We get so relaxed, we can't stay in our analytical mind to grade you.
Kind of like me driving today.
Yes, but that's exactly the point. You're not supposed to stay in your mind. We have lots of other music, and it's not a matter of saying that one is better than another. But when you need to quiet down, we need to calm the mind, it made no sense to me to use busy music to try to calm the mind. That's why when people say, oh, listen to Bach, he's the best music. Well, Bach is a genius, yes, but my mind listening to Bach goes bananas. I can't quiet down with that.
Right.
And I said, is it just me, or is that true of a lot of other people? So when I started being involved in graduate school, one of my mentors, Dr. Stanley Krippner, said, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to do research. And how do you prove that people's brains are not working the same when they listen to your music, when they listen to other people's music? Do biofeedback research. Brainwave biofeedback, and then I connected with, right after the first international study on Kirlian photography in 1993, one of my contacts, Dr. Irving Oil, brought back schematics. So I had access to one of the first two Kirlian photography devices in America in 1973. And that's what we used on the research, which was so far ahead of its time, we could not get a lot of publicity, and yet our photographs were used on the cover of Dr. Thelma Moss's book from UCLA with the other great pioneer researcher, Dr. Valerie Hunt. But,
we need to take a short
Sure.
break. Oh, God, there's so much I want to ask you. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Stephen Halpern.
Sharyn Wynters, The Pure Health Show, is brought to you by Mulberry Love. I love my Mulberry Love.
We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way, and I am Sharyn Wynters, and this show is based on my book, The Pure Cure, which I show, The Pure Cure, a complete guide to freeing your life from dangerous toxins. And if you haven't gotten your book yet, please go to my website, wintersway.com, WYNTERSWAY, and get yourself an autographed copy of this book. It is an amazing book. There's so much to learn, especially in this world today, of what's going on with radiation and Fukushima and GMO, and how do we protect ourselves? And we need to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. More and more.
More and more. As we were coming down here, we were looking at the hopscotch in the sky of
chemtrails in the sky. Yeah.
Chemtrails in the sky. It sounds like a Western, right?
Right.
We were listening to your music, though.
Right.
And I could actually feel my body. I just wanted to go and see, your music is affecting everybody on every level. Things are just falling away. They're so relaxed. It's
Stress is falling away.
Stress is just falling away. The glue is just becoming undone. What were we listening to, Stephen?
That was from the album Deep Theta, Theta, Part 1, the first track. And what you heard is the main instrument was the Rhodes electric piano, a very special instrument.
I had a Rhodes.
It's a keyboard, but the sound itself is so healing that the body is able to ingest it. It's like what you're saying about rather than just isolated molecules, it was a full food, full experience.
Right.
The body, it's like tuning forks in this. It's very, very wonderful tone. And then the way I'm playing it, where I don't set you up in the way that most music does. So let me give you an example. Folks, if you are not driving right now, and hopefully you're not if you're watching this.
Pull over.
Right.
Trust me. Pull over because you're going to get lost.
I'm going to give you an example, and this
Okay.
is an example of the hidden stresses in most music.
Okay.
Okay, so if I sing a very familiar pattern of ascending notes, become aware of what you feel in your chest, become aware of what you hear in your head. And if I go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and I don't play that last note, you hear it, you made the sound, many people are holding their breath.
Because you have to resolve it.
You don't have to, but we're culturally conditioned to resolve it.
Right.
In the East, in China, in Japan, their scales don't go that way because they're 5-note scales, pentatonic scales, that don't have that harmonic inevitability built in. This was part of the breakthrough in Western traditional classical music, that there was a melodic inevitability and a manipulation of our consciousness. Now, that's great for many things, but the problem is when you want to meditate or when you're just listening, your body and brain is commandeered. You have no choice but to go there.
Right.
So in my music, I do away with that. I color outside the lines. And in so doing, I upset the apple cart for a lot of people who said, well, but it doesn't go anywhere. But when they relax and release and go into it, the first thing they notice is their breathing slows down. They get more relaxed. Well, this is one of the hidden stresses, because even if the music is quietly playing over the PA system or in the background, your body is still responding. It's still ripping off part of your consciousness to pay attention. That's why if you try to read, listen to most music, and you pay attention, you will find that you will often be reading the same sentence over and over and over.
right.
And you say, well, even without doing biofeedback research, that, folks, is an example of how that music is making it harder to concentrate rather than supporting learning, super learning, etc. Now, the other aspect was to go deeper, is I wasn't just interested in counting somebody's breath. I wanted to look at the brain waves and the actual energy fields of an individual when they were listening to the most relaxing classical music, according to the Music Therapy Association, and my own original music, which sounded very much like what we just heard. And the differences were night and day. Working with some leading scientists, we developed a protocol, a double-blind, placebo-controlled experiment that's never been knocked down. It's been ignored by many people who don't like the fact that it proved that classical music was not the most relaxing music, because that's a sacred cow. But again, Bach and Beethoven and Mozart were not composing mostly for relaxation. If you were in Vienna and you composed for relaxation, you lost the gig. Think about it. Vienna was the caffeine capital of Austria, the caffeine capital of Europe at the time. They wanted to get more energized, which was great. But we're in a different time now, and we have more stresses that we face all the time. And this last series of albums that I have, the Deep Alpha and the Deep Theta, were created because as I was experiencing more stress from the increased cell phone towers and the smart grids on my utility meter and the chemtrails, I wanted to make an industrial strength version of my music. So I went back to what I was doing 20 and 30 years ago, adding brainwave entrainment technology in addition to the music. And that puts a double portion of healing and relaxation and helps guide your brainwaves. It's like training wheels for your mind. It takes you instantly into and I could dial in, as I do on the albums, the specific alpha wave and theta wave frequencies that have been associated and are known to be associated with relaxation and healing, higher consciousness. This is what you get into when you meditate. Right. So this is like a music-assisted meditation.
So this is great to play in meditation.
Yes, or to set the stage. So many people use headphones or just have it on in the background. For years, people would listen to my music or a lot of New Age music only as background.
Right.
And that always upset me as a musician because I was not interested in... I was always
background for somebody.
Music. I was not interested in being wallpaper music.
Right.
I said, no, my music operated on two levels. You could use it as background, but it maintained a musical viability that when you actually pay attention to it, as many people started doing, they go, wow, this is really well done. This is real music. But it was real music from another perspective than Western European music. In Japan, in other countries, they got it instantly, that there wasn't a required directionality, an inevitability, whereas just it allowed you to be. It was music of being, as John Bradshaw was fond of saying, rather than music of doing.
Yeah. Didn't they do studies, though, with classical music that plants would grow better with classical music as opposed to heavy metal music?
Yes. One person did that study, and
That's why I play music when
sure.
I'm gone,
And that-
because it helps my plants.
yes, it does. Now, the plants also are responding to you. So that was part of the variable that Dorothy Redelac didn't incorporate into her research design. I went out to visit her when her book came out in Denver area. And she wanted to repeat that study when we mentioned, wow, plants love your music, maybe even more than some of the Western classical. And yes, in a controlled environment, heavy metal caused the plants to shrivel up and grow away from the speakers. And the plants would grow towards the speakers when they played Ravi Shankar, played Western classical, and when they played mine. The college would not allow her to do a follow-up because people were so upset and obviously gave more money than her husband, who donated a lot of funding to that college. But that hasn't been continued. There were studies done at Fairleigh Dickinson University in the early 80s in New Jersey showing what happens when rats and mice are exposed to heavy metal music. And at that point, the most heavy metal was Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin.
And those little mice gave their life to science. This research is, I guess, not allowed to be done anymore. But when they sliced open the brains, they found that not just causing stress, not just causing irritation and aggression in the mice, but literally their brains, their neuronal growth patterns were very abnormal, and you could see cancers and lesions growing. This was very, very upsetting to the scientists, and wouldn't you know, they lost their funding, they lost their tenure, they were kicked out, and this research has never been carried on. I spoke to Dr. Harvey Bird about that at the time, and he was very upset. But the problem is you can't do, obviously, brain research where you slice people's brains open on most people, whether they're listening to rock or disco or rave music or whatever. You can, however, look at the associated electromagnetic fields around the brain. And that's what we did with the EEG and with the Kirlian photography. And what we found was a radical difference, that your energy fields instantly came into a higher level of coherence around the brain. Your energy shifted into a high coherence pattern. Your brainwaves naturally shift when you listen to any of my music down from the normal beta active thinking mode into alpha. And then as I, in some of the recordings, take you deeper, just naturally, and then on the most recent albums, add the sonic technology of binaural beats, brainwave entrainment technology to guarantee that you're there. So you don't have to wonder. If you put this album on, you don't have to necessarily go to a biofeedback lab. You will be in a deep theta state. So who did I upset when I did that? Some of the biofeedback people. Why should people come to our lab if they could just buy your album? Right. Well, I wasn't thinking about that. I'm thinking about what do I do, because I want to do this at home. I don't want to have to go to a lab.
Right.
And that was the beginning of starting my record label, because record companies said, we don't know what to do with this. So I said, well, I guess I'll just have to start it myself.
Do it yourself.
And I learned by the seat of my pants over the years. And then people like Suzanne Doucet here in L.A. started the first store, only New Age music, that really helped, and I think it was 1987, really helped put the genre on the map. And there's a lot of different kinds of music in New Age, there's a lot of subgenres. But when we come to the healing and meditative aspect, it's very different than what was played for a lot on the wave when they did the smooth jazz version of New Age.
There's a lot of musicians that got their own little studio at the house, and their piano players. Hey, I can do that. And so they'll just I call it metaphysical meandering.
Exactly.
And it gets me nuts.
Gets a lot of people nuts, but they don't know, because most people aren't really in touch with what's going on in their body. And that's why the breathing experience that I did before is so phenomenal, because people notice that their breathing slows down in the same way that I could snap my fingers and control your breathing. This is done on advertising. It's done in movies all the time.
We're both sensitive. We went to a restaurant last night.
Oh,
And the
yes.
noise, and I find the older that I get, the more I cannot stand to be in a
Right.
noisy room. And most of these restaurants are so noisy. It is so not enjoyable to me, and I'm really sensitive. Same thing with guitars. I cannot stand, my nervous system cannot take a guitar that is just going crazy. I just can't take it.
And
But a
honor that and
beautiful
trust that.
But a beautiful guitar, like I was listening to John Williams'
Right.
Concerto. How do you say that? Concerto di
Aranjuez?
Yeah, Ron West. Oh, I love that's one of my
Yes.
favorite pieces. We're going to take a short break, and we'll
Great.
play some more of your music, and I'll ask you questions afterwards. We'll be right back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way.
Mulberry love. For thousands of years, mulberries have played an integral role in traditional Chinese medicine. Now, Western science is being applied to explore these ancient practices. Call it the eternal dance of yin-yang or a harmonious meeting of cultures. This refreshing blend of mulberry juice and coconut water tastes delicious too. Mulberry Love, a revolutionary superfruit drink.
We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I'm Sharyn Wynters. The show is called The Pure Cure, a complete guide to freeing your life from dangerous toxins. 20 different chapters, 20 areas of concern and what we can do about it. I have chapters on what to do about our food. Oh my God, we really need to know what's going on so that we can empower ourselves, because knowledge is power. It's not going to go away. It's not getting better. This my show that I did last week with on GMO, you need to be aware about what this is doing to our bodies and what it's going down the road into future generations. I have some real concerns about our food. Are we on a Titanic that is non-stopping? But I truly also believe that if enough people start standing in and start taking action, that we can do something about it. Don't you think so?
Well,
Stephen?
I certainly hope so. And the reality is that if we don't do anything, we know we have no choice or chance to change it. If we do, I mean, some states did just at least get the GMO labeling.
Yeah, I mean, there are countries that won't even allow it. We're
Yes.
fighting hard to get GMO labeling, but as long as corporations are funding politicians, we will never have integrity in office, and that's where that's at.
Yeah.
So we both got the chills at the same time listening to Stephen's music. And it's wonderful to see that you respond so well, because I hang out with a lot of musicians, and we listen to their music, and they're always they don't like to hear it or this and that, but you enjoy it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so we were driving down, and we were both listening, and you were telling me about it and what's going on, which is so wonderful. What were we just listening to?
Right. That was Deep Alpha, track 1, featuring the incredible Paul McCandless on English horn.
I love the English horn. It's such a beautiful instrument.
And
isn't
he is such a master. And we had him come in to the bed that I had pre-produced. And I can't prove this. I haven't done research yet. But as he was improvising and recording his part at that same place, my engineer and I in the studio, as it was being recorded, got chills.
Yeah.
So there's something, I believe, going on with that.
Yeah.
And then with the Rhodes piano coming up, playing the keyboard of your spine, and the way the
That's
strings.
why the chills are going up the spine.
Well, that's part, but there's all the combination. There's a high level of creativity. And here's the other thing. Early on in my career, I learned that music is a carrier wave of consciousness. With any kind of music, you embody and then you radiate out your state of being. Right. So if you're playing heavy metal and lust and aggressiveness, that's also sent out to people.
Absolutely.
And if you're in a very peaceful place, I learned early on that to play the kind of music I want to play, I have to be in that place of peace. So that is transmitted on the waves of sound. It's metadata. It's hard necessarily to quantify it, but there are scientists who have been able to measure the intention field around music and the intention field without music that is now part of the subtle energy sciences that are well respected in certain parts of the world. It's the leading edge of science, and there also, again, now is a blowback effect where people are so much into the materialistic thing that I would just say read Lynn McTaggart's book, The Field, to really get an overview of what's going on. I had the honor and the good karma to work with some of these scientists back in the 70s. So
Back in the 70s.
early on, and then I would take that understanding into the studio. But when I'm in the studio, I'm not thinking science. I'm just in the music. And part of the other reason that is so easy for me to listen is sometimes I don't hear the music until I listen to playback.
You don't write anything down. It just comes.
Mostly not. Mostly I'm
it
just
comes through you.
in the moment. It comes through, and whether it's and in jazz we have a lot of people talking about that. Keith Jarrett talks about that. Coltrane would talk about that. We have musicians in all fields. Mozart talked about music coming through, and he would thank God that it sounds Mozartian because they didn't have some of the other terminology to describe. I got comfortable with this very early that I didn't necessarily need to know where it's coming from. I dealt with the results. It made me feel good. It made people who listened to it feel good, and that was the bottom line. So when I listen, many times it's like listening for the first time. And when you get away from the predictability and the familiar responses that we have when we know where the music is going to go, then that makes it a fresh response each time. And that's why people, back when we had vinyl LPs, people would write me and say, hey, we wore out our album playing it so much. Now, that doesn't happen with CDs, and it certainly doesn't happen if you're just getting it, downloaded on subscription. But your response doesn't habituate, which is very unusual in the world of music.
Right. And it's always anew.
It's always new.
It's always new, which is incredible.
Which means that it's one of the most cost-effective things that you could buy for yourself. It's always been part of my prescription for sound health is to have your own supply, your own resources, your own CDs or your own MP3 files, so that you're not waiting for a subscription channel to play a song you like. That when I need it, going back to old MTV days, I want my relaxation, and I want it now. And when I put on any of these songs that we've heard so far, or the albums, I know that I could guarantee within seconds. You come from the East Coast, I come from New York. When I started out, music therapists said, whoa, relaxation in music? We could get you relaxed in 20 minutes. And I'd say, excuse me, I come from New York. I don't have 20 minutes.
Really?
What can get me there in 1 minute?
Really?
Oh, that's impossible. There's no music that can do that. And I said, I've just been doing research. I've been composing new music. Check this out.
Your music is instant.
Yeah.
It's like it's instant. I realize that I can't listen to your music driving. I got that.
And most of it maybe you shouldn't be. And different people work differently. Some people can. I have a friend, Barry Tidings, used to live around here. He could listen to the deepest, most trancy music I had, but he's unusual. So you need to know your own capacity.
I'm very sensitive
Exactly.
to music.
In the
and
same
to sound.
To sound. In
And
the same.
I go into it, so whatever it may be.
Right. And I had the experience in the early 80s driving back from San Francisco to where I lived in Palo Alto, listening to the classical station, and suddenly I was so into the music, I was almost in the driver's seat of the car in the lane to the right of me. And I was awakened by his angry horn honking. So I pulled off the road to find out what that song was because I was channel surfing and came in the middle. It was Death and Transfiguration by Strauss. I almost became part of the title.
Oh, right.
So that should not be played on the air either without, a warning. But, if you come in at the middle, you're not going to get the warning.
What's the best way to find your music? Can they go, people go onto your website and you have all your CDs, can they purchase them on your website?
Certainly, thank you. The website is fine, but Amazon, iTunes for the downloads, but Amazon has the downloads and all the CDs.
Can they download from your website?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And my website always has the latest remastered, latest versions of anything.
So let's go to Stephen's website, which is stephenhalpern.com, STEVENHALPERN.com, and you have all your latest
I have
and
everything
greatest
there.
hits.
This is the only site in the world that has everything that I've done that's
Because it's
available.
you.
Because it's me. Because
It's you.
And part of the problem with third-party sales and other websites is they will sometimes have versions that came out 10 or 15 years ago before the new sonic technology, Pro Tools and the other systems that we use, allowed us to remaster from the original, even from an earlier CD, let alone from the LPs and the analog masters. My CDs, like CHAKRA SUITE now, sound cleaner and warmer than the original vinyl. And most people can't say that. But if you use the technology right, you can make CDs that sound so warm and crystal and maintain the healing quality. Yeah. The bad rap that CDs got was because in the early days, CDs were badly made, and a lot of the recording engineers and CD engineers had high threshold hearing damage because they listened to so much music at a loud volume. And I was working with an album with a Grammy-winning engineer who was cranking up the treble on my album with Paul Horn, and Paul sounded tinny with his golden flute. And I said, you can't do that to me or to Paul Horn. Paul would be very upset. I took my album, walked out, got in a lot of trouble with my the 1 year I was licensed to another label, pissed off some people. I said, I'm now in charge of mastering my own CDs.
Limiters on music too. So
there's a lot of reasons that things didn't sound right. But if you know what you're doing and have great engineers, and I've been blessed to work with some great engineers. Currently, I've been the last 15 years working with Warren Kahn up in Sebastopol, California. He has great ears. He's a sensitive musician. He knows what I'm going for, which is also very important.
Yes.
Every engineer that I've worked with understands my goal. I've been in some other studios for an hour or two that was supposed to be a full day session where they, can't you speed this up? Can't you crank the treble up? I said, no, you're a rock and roll engineer. I was brought in on this session. This session is over. I'm taking my stuff. We're out of here.
Good for you. Good for you.
Because
because you can't do that to your music.
You can't. And the same thing
You
with the other
know your
musicians.
music.
Oh, yes. And when I've produced albums with a lot of other musicians, like Paul Horn, like Paul McCann, like Georgia Kelly, who was a legend here in L.A. in the 70s. And there was something special about the ambience of, as a producer, and the guides and the band that you can't see that I work with, that some of the most incredible music that these other musicians have ever played have occurred on my albums. And you can listen to all their other albums, and they won't be in that same deep space. So this is not just me. This is just part of the blessing of being involved with this kind of the work. And the results stand for themselves.
It's great.
Great.
We're going to take a little space. We're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back with more of Stephen Halpern and a little bit more of his music.
Sharyn Wynters, the Pure Health Show, is brought to you by Mulberry Love. I love my Mulberry Love.
We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I am Sharyn Wynters, and this show is based on my book, The Pure Cure, a complete guide to freeing your life from dangerous toxins. 20 different chapters, 20 areas of concern, from EMFs that we were talking about, and smart meters, and cell phones. And I've had guests on all these topics throughout the weeks, and it's just been incredible to be able to give this information out to people so that they know what's going on, so that they can protect themselves.
Yeah.
It's so important. People don't realize it. As you said before, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. But even though you can't see it, it does exist.
It does exist, and you're being affected by it.
And we're being really affected by it. And we really need to do everything that we can possibly do to protect ourselves. That's why the statistics today, 1 in 2 people are going to get some form of cancer. It's like your house is going to be burnt down. Are you just going to sit there and let it happen? Or are you going to be armed and ready for it and take hold and do everything that you can to protect your body and keep your body as healthy as you possibly can, so we keep our immune system up? Because everything that they're doing lately is, I just had an amazing thought. Everything that they're doing lately is to knock our immune system down.
Exactly.
And it's like that with the music of today, the audio caffeine music of today. It's like so aggressive and angry music. And yes, they have a lot to be angry about.
Right. And there are books, I think not far from here, Professor Griff has some very interesting perspectives on that it's not an accident that there's so much negativity in the music and so much aggression. But regardless of why it is, the reality is that it is going on. And if you are just passively allowing all this into your environment and not making your own choices for what you allow in, it's garbage in, garbage out, and it's creating, and the stresses that you're not even aware of. Right. My perspective was to point out a lot about the sound and noises in our environment that were affecting that. I was, and still am, and you are also highly responsive to noise and that stress. What I started doing is to research that and find out that it was for real. And then as part of my early entree out into the world, I started talking not just about sound healing, but sound unhealing and noise pollution. Right. And for a while, I was being pigeonholed as Mr. Noise Pollution as opposed to Mr. Sound Healing, right. Dr. Sound, as Norman Shealy called me. So those are the things. The song that we just listened to was the first track from the major opus that I came out to the world with, called CHAKRA SUITE, which was known in the first 15 years as Spectrum Suite because people didn't know what chakras were back then. And that was getting in the way.
We've come a long way.
We have. With the rise of yoga in the late 90s and nowadays, we've, as a society, got much more aware of these subtle energy centers in the body. And we kind of know what this is. But we just heard one track. To be used properly, you play all 7 selections, which you won't get if you're playing shuffle or on a...
right, got it. On a CD player.
On a CD player or on a radio show. And that's why you need something. But you could play this as you're getting dressed. It balances the energy centers in the body.
So do you have each song, chakra
a
1,
keynote?
chakra 2? Because each
yes.
chakra has a sound.
That's right.
It has a vowel.
That's right.
It has a color.
That's right.
And
I talked about that on my first album. Would you believe that stores said, we don't want you talking about these metaphysical concepts on your album? But this is, what the base, right, what the album's about.
I heard on that song the space between the notes.
Because
and that was like...
Yes, it gives you space to breathe. When you listen to, when I'm playing the notes, you'll hear the envelope of the sustain of one note fade completely out before I'll play another one. Right. And then other times I'll build on that. But that's conscious. That's what I'm listening to when I'm playing, because I am in that state.
Right.
And then my state is accompanying and overlaid on that, so you're getting both of those aspects. There's no external brainwave entrainment on CHAKRA SUITE, on most of my albums, unless it says there's brainwave entrainment. In the same way, there's no subliminal messages, subliminal affirmations on any of my albums, unless they say subliminal affirmations. Right. And I have a whole series. I was one of the first musicians to put out a series of subliminal affirmation albums, because when you're in a deeply relaxed state, your brain is more receptive to positive or negative, but certainly positive affirmations. And I started needing to work on that myself here in L.A. at that point. Of course, Louise Hay
Right.
made the world of positive thought, things that have been going on in the world of new thought and unity and science of mind, etc., available to the public, and got it out of the woo-woo thing. And some of the leading scientists know that how powerful those affirmations, our self-talk is. Well, bringing that in with music takes it directly into the back brain. It's so much less work. I come from New York. I don't want to work hard at doing stuff. If I could get something done quickly and easily without my even having to work at it, I'm interested.
It's interesting that you talk about music coming right into the back brain, which
Yeah.
is what kirtan does too.
Yes.
And when
Ancient technology.
Right. Which is, if you have not done kirtan, if you've never gone to a kirtan, you've got to go. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Uh-huh.
It just, I went to a Ram Dass
Yes.
event.
Krishna Das, you meant.
No, I went to a Ram
The
Dass
right,
event.
as I have.
And I went to a couple, but the big one that I went to, Krishna Das was there. And
Sure,
every
because they
night
worked.
we had 2 hours of kirtan.
Yeah.
By the time I left, my body was vibrating
That's
because
right.
when you start chanting Sanskrit,
A sacred language that has these knowledge systems and the wisdom encoded into the vibrations.
that's right, coded into the vibrations.
So you don't have to think about it, it's already there.
Right.
And that's where I say that my music builds on the ancient sound healing traditions of India and China and Egypt. Because they were doing, in Egypt, you can see pictures of people levitating, carved into the walls of the temples of Abydos, levitating with sound. There are books that say that the pyramids were levitated into the big, huge blocks using levitation by sound. There's research going on in Japan and other places with levitation with sound. So there's technology with sound that we don't fully
I
know
understand.
now that the ancients had
And
a handle on.
what people don't realize is that stress is such a component of being healthy or ill.
Yeah.
Most diseases that we get are stress related. Anything with
Absolutely.
digestion or neck or back or and any of it, it's stress related. And
Right.
living in today's world, it is so important to do what we can today.
Stress, yeah.
Relax.
When I started, stress was barely understood as a concept.
Right.
And I was, again, in the right place at the right time to connect with the research of Dr. Herbert Benson, who wrote the great book, The Relaxation Response.
Right.
Until then, people were not even considering stress to be a factor that needed to be considered. When I had a doctor point out to me that my stress level, which I thought was just what everybody dealt with, when they did some readings and did the stomach acidity and did some other things in my body, they said, your level is off the chart. And I thought, I'm just me. He said, if you don't do something about your own stress level, you're not going to be healthy after 40. And it's going to cost you a lot of money to stay alive. The money got my attention also. So I said, okay, so not only do I like playing this music and working with this, I need to address other areas of my life and include music as the complete package to reduce my own stress level. And I've been doing that ever since.
So you think that as you have evolved in your consciousness,
Right.
your music has, because you're an extension of who you are,
Exactly.
your music has evolved. So the music that were in the 70s is quite different from
It's
where-
more refined now, right?
It's much more refined now, but and much more has been put into it
Right.
because of your knowledge, your consciousness,
Yeah.
your awareness, your growth.
Yeah, and that's all what is also built into the Deep Alpha, Deep Theta, and Deep Alpha 2, and Deep Theta 2.0. And what was so amazing 2 years ago when Deep Alpha was nominated for the Grammy of the Best New Age Album.
Is that incredible?
It was, and it was a gift because there are a lot of people in the entertainment world. There are some that are certainly changing now,
I mean,
but a
this
lot
year,
of them.
Kirtan was nominated.
Right.
First time.
Right, and
Kirtan.
mine was the first mellow meditative album that was ever nominated, and I had a great little speech ready. I was really frustrated I didn't get a chance to say it, but the point is that the world is ready for this now. The world needs it, and
we
people are
need it
paying
desperately.
attention. And the great part, certainly being in LA today, about the Grammys is that gave it a gravitas, a level of professionalism and acceptance that people who hadn't paid attention before said, wow, maybe we ought to listen. And once they listen, they get hooked immediately because that music puts you into the zone.
Well, every massage therapist, I used to
Yes.
do massage therapy a billion years ago. You know, you have you have your whole list of music that you play
Right.
because we need to get everything we can to get that patient, that client, into that relaxation.
Right. It makes your job easier. Their
Absolutely.
bodies are more receptive. You don't have to work
you
as
know,
hard.
as I told you before, I used to bring in not only music but color therapy,
Sure.
aromatherapy, and sound is sound healing.
Yep.
You're a sound healer.
Well, that's it.
You're a sound healer.
And it's legal to be called that now. You can't get a degree in that per se, but we use sound as healing.
Well, you start your own
Doctors-
record company. Maybe you could start your own school.
Well, I'm
To help
looking
some
at
of these
that.
musicians.
I've
that
worked
are
with some
in-
other schools, and I
that-
teach at some sound healing
that
schools.
are
Yep.
into metaphysical meandering. Every little musician in
Right.
town thinks they can put out a metaphysical CD
Yeah.
as quality.
Yeah. There's a lot of work to do, and I'm really delighted to be on the show to share this information.
Yeah.
Because
I'm so glad,
right,
glad you're here, Stephen. Thank you
And-
for flying in.
absolutely.
So we've got
Minute.
a minute left. Give us some imparting healing words.
Great. So one thing to do would be, in addition to playing music in the background and some healing music every day, even if you take only 5 minutes, take that 5 minutes for yourself as a treat for yourself. As Oprah would say, honor your spirit and go into that space with the music on, whether you have it on a boombox, your home system, or headphones, and just music that takes you to that space. Don't multitask. Just be there, be present, be in the present moment with the music. And when you choose the right music, you will be there and you will feel renewed, regenerated, happier also. And you will also know that your body is shedding stress. Your body is a self-regulating organism if you give it a chance. Listening to music like this gives it a chance. And when there are barking dogs or noisy neighbors or things, speak to them. Work actively to decrease some of the negative and irritating sounds around you, because all those irritating sounds
Absolutely.
increase your stress level.
Did you notice that when you enter my house, I have music
Oh, yes. Comes
coming
right
in, and when you leave my house,
Absolutely.
I have music. I had that set up
I
specifically.
figured that out, right?
Go, where's that music coming
Right.
from? But I wanted
Motion
to create
activated.
motion activated. So as soon as you walk into my house and you open up the door, that music goes on, and it's
Well, I don't know if you've ever had pictures of your house here, but your house is a feng shui marvel. I mean, when I walked in and saw it in the light, it was every place is impeccable. So I salute you because you are a master of many levels, a very healing environment in the house. And
well, it's my space, and it's important to me.
well, it is, and
And-
it
and
just
that's where I live.
yeah, it's where you share when other people
Non-toxic
come there.
environment.
So that's something that folks could do at home, and it's as
Yeah.
simple as bringing a CD or a sound file and getting it in and,
And
playing it.
You know, if I'm bummed, which I'm very rarely bummed out because I live in
Right.
gratitude most of my time. As soon as I open up my door, there's that music, and it just puts me right there.
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for
Great.
being here. I so appreciate you, and I'm in so much gratitude
Great.
that you flew in last night to
Well-
be here. And I love your music. I love you.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you're giving to so many people and helping them.
Great. Well, this has been an honor and pleasure, and I really enjoyed this talk. You're wonderful. You set such a receptive and a creative ambiance here. And Chris, thank you for being
Yeah,
our
thank you,
engineer.
Chris.
This is just the time has flown by.
It has. And to your health, go look at Stephen's website, stephenhalpern.com. Look at mine, Wynters Way, WYNTERSWAY.com. Pick up your copy of The Pure Cure. And to your health, namaste.
I'm just doing my thing, doing my thing. Oh, you keep hanging. I'm just doing my thing. Oh, you keep hanging.
So I give you solutions, not just here's the problem, but I give you solutions.
I'm just doing my 6 in the morning. Yeah, I'm on my dough. And I ain't gonna
And that's why I wrote the book. It took me, it's about 37 to 40 years of research.
cause I'm sipping on some herbs. Now I'm flourishing, life's an excursion. If you get it,
When you isolate a vitamin from its whole food form, it becomes nothing more than an isolated chemical, and your body actually has to work harder to break it down to its molecular structure.
feeling so good, so good. And I'm feeling so good.